You know, usually when a machine breaks down, like say your laptop just completely freezes up or your car engine just stalls out on the highway, there's this incredibly comforting expectation of precision, right?
Right, yeah, like there's a specific reason it happens.
Exactly. You run a diagnostic test, you isolate, the broken microchip or the faulty fuel valve, and then you just swap the broken part out for a brand new one, and you're good to go. The machine works again.
It's just a simple, satisfying loop of cause and effect.
Yeah.
It's entirely binary. The broken part comes out, the functional part goes in, and the problem is solved.
Yeah, we like that.
We do. I
Yeah.
mean, as humans, we naturally gravitate toward that kind of mechanical logic. We want our problems to be highly visible, easily categorized, and most importantly, replaceable.
Replaceable, yes. But then you look at human history, specifically at how we try to fix our societies, and suddenly that comforting diagnostic logic just completely falls apart.
Oh, totally.
We look at our civilizations, we see them breaking down, and we just keep swapping out the parts. Like, we swap out the leaders, we swap out the political parties, we swap out the entire governing ideology. But the machine stays broken.
Yeah, it's basically the ultimate recurring nightmare for any civilization.
Right. So today, we were taking a deep dive into this really fascinating dialogue between two thinkers, Nick and Maya, who are attempting to answer this exact question. The question that basically haunts every political revolution and election in human history.
And it's such a massive question. I mean, why do the exact same systemic problems, the rampant corruption, the staggering wealth inequality, the, blatant abuse of power, the political division, and just that deep-seated public distrust, why do they inevitably reappear?
It's like clockwork.
It is. You can change the national flag, you can rewrite the Constitution, you can put a completely different human being behind the desk in the highest office, and yet if you just give it enough time, the exact same rot sets in all over again.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to figure out why history just keeps playing on this agonizing, repetitive loop, our sources today are going to take us, well, way beyond typical political theory.
Way beyond it.
Yeah. Nick and Maya's dialogue pulls from a massive spectrum of research. We're talking about blending history, behavioral science, and neuroscience to challenge, almost everything we intuitively assume about leadership.
Yeah, we are going to examine why our standard method of diagnosing societal failure is just fundamentally flawed from the ground up. I mean, we tend to focus entirely on the visible actors, right?
The people on the stage.
Exactly, the people on the stage, while remaining completely blind to the invisible forces that are actually shaping their behavior.
Let's start right there, actually, with that historical observation of repeating societal rot. So Nick argues in our source material that the reason we fail to fix these recurring problems is our total obsession with the visible.
Right.
And the visible in this case are the leaders. The invisible is the system itself. And to illustrate this, he uses this analogy of a severely damaged vehicle.
Oh, the car analogy, that's a great one.
It's so good. Okay, so imagine a car with shattered brake lines, a sputtering, half-dead engine, and tires that are just completely bald, worn down to the wire.
Basically a verifiable death trap on wheels.
A total disaster of a car.
Mm-hmm.
Now, imagine putting two entirely different drivers behind the wheel of that exact same car.
Yep.
Driver A is, reckless, aggressive, maybe a little arrogant, taking corners way too fast. But driver B is incredibly careful, deeply responsible, hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, checking every single mirror.
Doing everything right.
Doing everything right. But what actually happens when they drive, driver B might delay the inevitable crash a little bit longer than driver A. They might navigate a few turns more cautiously.
Sure.
But neither driver can overcome the fundamental mechanics of the vehicle. If
Yeah.
you hit a patch of black ice with bald tires and broken brakes, you are going into the ditch regardless of your moral character or your driving skills.
You're crashing either way.
Right. Changing the driver might help on the margins, but repairing the vehicle is the only way to actually survive the trip.
That imagery perfectly captures what Nick refers to in the text as the blank slate theory, or, well, really, the sheer illusion of the blank slate.
The illusion, yeah.
Right, because when we elect a new leader, or when a new regime takes power, we subconsciously operate under this delusion that they are starting with a blank piece of paper.
Oh, yeah.
We act as if they get to, design the car from scratch the exact moment they take office.
Which is never true.
No leader in history has ever had a blank slate.
Yeah.
I mean, they inherit a civilization that is already moving at hundreds of miles an hour.
Yeah.
They're stepping into this massive, tangled web of pre-existing, deeply entrenched laws, intense economic pressures,
Mm-hmm.
inherited cultural expectations, and just massive institutional
The
debts.
momentum is already there.
Exactly. The system has its own massive momentum, and the new driver is honestly mostly just trying to hold onto the wheel.
But wait, I mean, let me push back a bit here. Aren't we just letting bad leaders off the hook here?
How do you mean?
I mean, I hear the logic of the broken car analogy, but if a leader is actively corrupt, like if they're deliberately stealing public funds, lying to the public, maliciously abusing their authority, surely that is a fundamental failure of their own personal character, right? Not the car they happen to be driving.
I see what you're saying.
If someone embezzles millions of dollars, we can't just blame the steering wheel.
No, absolutely not. And that is a crucial distinction to make. Actually, Maya pushes back with that exact same argument in the source dialogue. Accountability absolutely matters.
Right. Good.
Yeah, validating personal responsibility is essential to any functioning society. We can't just throw up our hands, surrender our agency, and say, oh, the system made them do it.
Yeah.
People make choices, and they must own those choices.
Okay, phew.
However, and this is a big however, people do not make those choices in a vacuum. What's fascinating here is that the hard biological realities of human behavior dictate that we constantly subconsciously respond to the environment around us. We are biologically driven to adapt to the incentives we are given.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source takes this argument entirely out of the realm of abstract philosophy and just drops it straight into our neurobiology.
Right into the brain.
Yes. Nick points out that our brains are physically wired to adapt to whatever our specific environment rewards. Like, we aren't just making philosophical choices, our biology is physically reacting.
We're talking about the brain's core reward system here. The dopamine pathways.
The dopamine.
Yeah. In popular culture, dopamine is often reduced to just being a feel-good chemical, like the thing that gives you a little rush when you get a notification on your phone.
Like getting it like on a photo or something.
Exactly. But neurobiologically, dopamine is a profound learning mechanism. It's the chemical currency of survival. It literally teaches your brain which specific behaviors will ensure your success, your status, and your survival within your current environment.
So if a system structurally rewards honesty, transparency, and long-term planning, your brain biologically adapts to prioritize those traits. You get a dopamine hit from cooperating. But if you are dropped into a system that consistently rewards manipulation, secrecy, or, flashy short-term successes over actual substance, the brain adapts to that reality instead.
It has to. The brain quite literally rewires its neural pathways to succeed in whatever environment it finds itself in. Neuroplasticity ensures that we mold ourselves to the shape of our surroundings.
Wow.
So if the environment demands ruthlessness to achieve status, the brain will begin to suppress empathy and heighten aggression. And not because the person is inherently evil, but because the brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do.
Which is survive.
Survive and thrive in the given conditions, yeah.
Think about what this means for you, the listener, in the context of the leaders we elect. Even a highly ethical person, someone who enters a position of power with the purest intentions and a rock-solid moral compass, will deeply struggle if they are placed in an environment that constantly, systematically rewards the wrong things.
It's an uphill battle.
Like, imagine a whistleblower inside a deeply corrupt corporation. They want to be honest, but every time they tell the truth, they are punished, demoted, or ostracized. Meanwhile, the colleagues who fudge the numbers, well, they get promoted, they get bonuses, they get praised.
They're getting all the rewards.
Right. So over time, the ethical person's brain is being conditioned to view honesty as a threat to survival and deception as the key to success. The system slowly, methodically chips away at their baseline.
It's terrifying, honestly.
You still want ethical drivers, of course, but the goal of understanding this biology is to figure out what actually makes good leadership possible in the first place.
And this biological reality exposes a massive, glaring blind spot in how we function as a society.
Yeah.
I mean, we are notoriously terrible at diagnosing systemic failures because our brains are just hyper-focused on individual actors.
Right, the face on the TV.
Exactly. Evolutionary biology taught us to look out for the immediate threat, the tiger in the bushes or the hostile member of the tribe. So we are primed to see the reckless driver and direct all our outrage at them while remaining completely blind to the severed brake lines underneath the car.
Maya introduces this incredibly powerful nature analogy in the text to illustrate this collective blind spot we have. So think about a tiny dormant seed.
Okay.
If you take a remarkably healthy, premium grade seed, like the absolute best genetic material you can find, and you plant it in toxic, nutrient-depleted, poison soil,
Mhm.
it is going to struggle.
Naturally.
It might barely sprout, its leaves might be yellow and stunted, or it might just wither and die entirely. But on the flip side, you can take a completely ordinary average seed with no special pedigree, planted in incredibly rich, fertile, perfectly watered soil, and it will absolutely flourish.
It'll thrive
It will grow deep roots, it'll bear fruit. Yet when things go wrong in human society, when the metaphorical plant withers and dies, we almost always blame the seed.
every single time.
We scrutinize the leader's character, their background, their personal flaws, and we completely forget to look at the soil.
We obsess over the seed while standing in a toxic wasteland, basically, wondering why nothing beautiful is growing. And we really have to critically examine why we do this.
Yeah.
The source dialogue points out that blaming a single leader is deeply, profoundly satisfying on an emotional level.
Oh, for sure.
Right. It provides us with a clear, identifiable villain. It gives us a focal point for all our collective anxiety, anger, and frustration. If the problem is just that specific person, then the solution is wonderfully simple. We just vote them out, fire them, or overthrow them, and everything will magically fix itself.
It provides the illusion of a quick fix. Like, it feels like we are taking decisive action without having to do any of the actual heavy lifting.
It is the ultimate cognitive shortcut. Because
Yeah.
understanding complex systems,
Yeah.
analyzing the chemical composition of the soil, that is incredibly tedious, exhausting work.
No one wants to do that.
No. It requires us to look at the massive, invisible economic and cultural forces shaping our world. And frankly, analyzing the soil often implicates all of us in the process.
Oof, yeah.
It forces us to acknowledge that the societal rot isn't just some bizarre anomaly caused by one bad apple who somehow snuck into power. It's a feature of the orchard we have all been cultivating and participating in.
So, what does this all mean then? Like, how do we actually evaluate the soil of our own society?
Tough question.
Because if we know that we can't just keep playing musical chairs with our politicians, swapping out the drivers and expecting the broken car to suddenly win a race, what are we supposed to be looking for in the dirt?
Well, to truly evaluate the soil, we have to start asking some deeply uncomfortable, probing questions about the architecture of our society.
Okay.
We have to look at the mechanical design of the institutions we live under, from our local school boards all the way up to the federal government. Nick outlines a series of these diagnostic questions in the dialogue, and they're just incredibly revealing.
What kind of questions?
Well, we have to ask, does our current political and economic system encourage cooperation, or does it demand endless, cutthroat competition just to survive?
Like, are we setting up an environment where for me to win, you absolutely have to lose?
Yes, exactly. And does the system incentivize transparency and open communication? Or does it financially and politically reward secrecy, closed-door dealings, and, the hoarding of information?
Right.
Does it value long-term sustainable thinking, like building infrastructure that will last a century? Or does it only care about immediate fleeting popularity, the next quarterly earnings report, and just short-term superficial gains?
It is essentially asking what the dopamine pathways of our entire society are wired to crave.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, if our political system only rewards a politician for screaming the loudest on television and raising money off of outrage, we shouldn't be confused when we end up with a government full of people who are excellent at screaming and terrible at governing.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it leads to what I consider the most profound paradigm shift in this entire dialogue.
Okay, I'm ready.
Nick proposes an idea that completely shatters a famous historical adage. So, for over a century, we've all heard Lord Acton's famous phrase, right? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Oh, yeah, everyone knows that one.
We treat it as an unquestionable law of physics. We assume that a good person climbs the mountain, reaches the peak, gets handed the ring of power, and then the power itself infectiously rots their soul.
I like Lord of the Rings.
Exactly like that. But the source challenges this narrative head-on. What if power doesn't corrupt at all? What if power simply reveals what the underlying system has been rewarding all along?
Oh, wow.
Right.
Let that concept really sink in for a moment for you listening. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. It strips away the necessity for a person to hide their adaptations to a toxic system. Think about the implications of that. If a political or corporate system has been quietly rewarding manipulation, ruthlessness, and a complete disregard for the rules during a person's entire 20-year climb to the top, Well, we shouldn't be shocked when they finally get the ultimate power and immediately exhibit manipulation and ruthlessness.
The signs were always there.
The power didn't change them into a monster. The power simply allowed them to stop pretending. They're just playing the exact same game the system forced them to learn, but now they're playing it with zero constraints.
They're playing the game at the highest possible level, with the maximum amount of leverage. Recognizing that power reveals rather than corrupts fundamentally changes everything about how we view the purpose and design of our institutions.
Shifts the entire goalpost of civilization. I mean, the goal of a well-designed political or economic system isn't to somehow manufacture morally perfect people to lead us.
Because perfect people have never existed in the history of humanity.
Never. And waiting for a savior is a terrible governance strategy. The goal, as Maya beautifully synthesizes it in The Source, is to make honesty easier. The objective of an institution is to reduce the collateral damage of ordinary, predictable human weakness. We know humans can be selfish.
Of course.
We know humans can be wildly short-sighted. We know they succumb to tribalism. A brilliant system anticipates all of those biological flaws and builds sturdy guardrails around them, rather than just crossing its fingers and hoping a living saint happens to win the next election.
And that realization is where the brilliant synthesis of all the scientific disciplines mentioned in our source material truly comes together. When you look at the overlap, it paints a complete picture.
How so?
Well, neuroscience explains the mechanism, right? Showing us exactly how our brains physically rewire themselves to chase the rewards dictated by the environment. Then, psychology expands on that, demonstrating how those neurological reward loops harden into daily habits and cultural norms through sheer repetition.
Right, the habits. And then evolutionary biology provides the historical context, reminding us that, fundamentally, human survival once depended upon hoarding limited resources and fiercely defending our in-group against outsiders.
Exactly. And finally, economics scales all of that up to a societal level, proving mathematically that institutional incentives will always dictate mass behavior.
Yeah, if you tax something, you get less of it.
Yep. And if you subsidize something, you get more of it, whether that is carbon emissions or corporate fraud. So while none of those individual fields promises some magical utopia, when you weave them together, they offer an incredibly hopeful, actionable message.
What's the message?
They tell us that human behavior is not permanently, statically fixed. We are not inevitably doomed to repeat the same agonizing cycles of corruption, inequality, and systemic collapse indefinitely.
Because if the behavior is an adaptation to the environment, then if we have the courage to change the environment, the behavior naturally changes with it.
Yes. The long-term survival of a civilization does not depend on a desperate, endless hunt for extraordinary, flawless leaders to drive the broken car. It relies on the much more practical, achievable, and necessary work of building extraordinary institutions.
So true.
We have to design systems that outlast any single individual's term in office. Institutions that systematically, reliably encourage transparency and cooperation generation after generation by making those behaviors the easiest and most profitable path to take.
It is about engineering a better car rather than just standing on the side of the road yelling at the drivers as they crash into the ditch.
I love that.
Which brings us back to you listening to this right now. We want to invite you to take a moment today and reflect on the systems and the soil in your own daily life.
Yeah, because this doesn't just apply to grand, abstract political systems or global economics. Think about the microenvironments you navigate every day.
Like your workplace.
Think about your workplace. Think about your local community organizations, your homeowners association, or even your own family dynamics.
Yeah.
What specific behaviors do those local systems actually reward in practice?
Yeah, like what gets praised in the weekly meeting, what gets quietly punished or ignored.
Exactly.
Are the people in your office genuinely rewarded for admitting a mistake and asking for help? Or do they only survive if they hide their errors and blame someone else? Are they promoted for elevating their colleagues or for quietly sabotaging them to look better by comparison?
It's all connected.
Because those local microenvironments are operating on the exact same dopamine principles and evolutionary biology as the macro-political ones. Which brings us to the haunting question from Maya and Nick's dialogue that we want to leave you with today.
This is a heavy one.
If you were placed in a system that consistently heavily rewarded corruption, how long would your personal integrity actually last? And what does that tell you about the leaders you currently blame?
It is a profoundly humbling thought experiment. And to build on the source material, consider this final possibility to mull over. If our brains naturally automatically adapt their dopamine pathways to match whatever our environment rewards, Is it possible that your own integrity, your own baseline for what you consider to be normal or right, had already been quietly rewired by the systems you live in without you even noticing?
Wow. When you really take a step back and look at the X-ray of society, the broken bones aren't the people. The broken bones are the incentives. And until we find the courage to fix those underlying mechanics, we are just going to keep putting cosmetic bandages on a machine that desperately needs a new engine. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning the soil around you.
Take care, everyone. Stay
Yeah.
curious.